Let's get it. Let's go. What's going on, you guys? I'm here with Ariel Curry, and we're going to be diving in. All right. She is legit. All right. She's a writer, editor, book coach. She specializes in book proposals. I mean, anything that you really need to learn about the traditional, hybrid publishing world, she is going to break it down for us today. And so I just want to welcome her to the show. Ariel, welcome.
Thanks so much, Jake. Oh my gosh, that was such a, I'm so hyped now. I'm so pumped up, ready to go.
I mean, that's what we got to do. Because look, I'll be honest, books aren't always the sexiest topic for people to
Oh,
get
what?
excited about. Now we may disagree, right? Like we love books and those things, but when most people think of like, oh, I'm going to listen to books, it's very like, ugh. And that's not what we do here. We make book writing fun. We make book writing easier than people think is possible, and we make people believe that books are the vehicle to the life they've always dreamed of. And that's
That's
why
right.
you're here. Okay.
That's
Because
right.
you help people get to the finish line. You help them get started. You help them go through this process and you make the magic happen. So I would love to start. Just give us a little bit of your background on
Yeah.
the different stages of your book and book career journey.
Totally. Okay. So we'll just start at the beginning, but I'll give you the quick highlights version. I was an English major, thought I was going to be a teacher, very quickly realized that was not going to happen. It was not going to be a good idea. And my best friend was like, "Well, you just love reading and you love reading all the time and you just want to live in book world. So why don't you look into publishing?" And I was like, "Yeah, because like two people have that job, whatever." But I looked into it and I ended up getting an internship at an academic press in London. And that was the start of my career. First day on the job, I walked in and they handed me a Chicago Manual of Style and were like, "Go sit in this dark corner editing books." And I was like, I have found my home. Speaking of making books sexy, right? So no, I mean, I did love that internship and that kind of led to another internship. And then I studied book publishing. And then I got a job as an editorial assistant at Corwin Press, which is also like a more education academic focused publisher. And then I worked my way up to senior acquisitions editor there. And I ended up leaving that position about a year and a half ago to start my own business, helping authors on my own. So that's what I do now.
That's amazing. It's so
Yeah.
cool because like we come from incredibly different backgrounds, yet we are in the same place. And so like I get to geek out with you today because you come from like the publishing world. Like you have all
Right.
the insider secrets, right? That I've learned about or that I've interviewed people about. Now we get to bring those secrets to the masses to share. And so I want to know, okay? One of the biggest things that we do is we help people self-publish their books, okay?
Mhm.
But a lot of people, when they're thinking about writing a book, their natural thought is, I want to go the traditional route because that's what they've known. That's what's been around. That's what's popular. That's what drives the ego. So I would love to know for you, what do you see as the main differences between self-publishing and traditional publishing?
Totally, totally. Yeah, this comes up a lot for me as well. In what I do now is kind of helping steer authors towards the right choice. So, traditional publishing, the best way to think about it is their investment and their reward. Self-publishing, my investment and my reward. So if you look at a book deal or creating a book like a business, I'm going to start a business. If I don't have the funds to start that business, then what do I have to do? I have to drop a business plan and I have to pitch that plan to the bank to try to get them to invest in my business. Or I'm, trying to do a startup. I'm looking for that, venture capital funding or something. I have to convince other people to take a chance and invest in me. Or I have the funding to just do it myself and kind of bootstrap it and make it my way. And obviously, when you involve other people in your business, they're going to have a say in how things go. When you have all the funding and all of the resources and all the means to do it yourself, you get to decide how things are going to go. So it's very similar to the book world. If I'm pitching a book to a publisher because I don't have the resources and the means to make it happen on my own or the knowledge to make it happen on my own, then they're going to, hopefully say yes to that. But that also means they get a say in how my book goes. If I'm self-publishing it, I'm, investing in it and doing all the work for it, which can be a downside. But then I also get all of the creative control. So that's the quick rundown. It's very similar to a business.
I've never heard someone give that analogy at the level that you just did. And it was beautiful. It was so
Oh,
beautiful. Because I think, like, to me, there's a few reasons why I prefer one or the other. And my story was, I had an idea to write a book at 22 years old. I had no following, no audience. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And I didn't want to go to 27 publishers, get rejected, spend a whole year trying to figure that out, because like that wasn't my dream. My
yeah.
dream was like, how can I get this message out as fast as possible and see what options come from it?
Yep.
And so, like, that, when you say like the control, their investment, their reward, my investment, my reward, that was
Mhm.
exactly it. Is like, I wasn't going to spend the time to do that. And I wanted to have all the control because I didn't know what I was doing. So I didn't want to give up control of what I didn't know was possible.
Mhm.
And that's a really, really great way to describe it. So, with that being said, though, who do you believe is best suited? Now, every person's different, but
Mhm.
who do you believe is best suited to pursue a self-publishing like route versus who do you suggest goes the traditionally published route?
Yeah. So for self-published authors or authors that I think should pursue self-publishing, I think are a lot of entrepreneurs, people where their book is so integrally, tied to their business, where they're going to want especially control over the marketing, because that's something that I see a lot of entrepreneurs want to try really innovative marketing strategies, and that's usually a no-go for traditional publishers, not because they don't think it's cool or don't want to, but honestly, just because they're too big to be flexible. They're too big and they have too much like organizational baggage to be really agile in that way. So I think that for a lot of entrepreneurs, I would almost always say go self-publishing, because you're going to be able to, like, first of all, you're used to bootstrapping it. You're used to making things succeed on your own. You've already got the networks and the supports, and you can do it. You can make a self-published book successful.
Mm,
I think the best people to traditionally publish are those who don't want to spend as much time doing all of that stuff. They not that they aren't hungry for it, because I very much believe that you should be hungry for, getting the word out there in any way you can. But people who want the support of a team that they're not necessarily in charge of, and they're not necessarily wanting to be responsible for all the things. They're more of the people who are open to like a partnership and saying, you do this because you're the book people, and I'll do the content because I'm the content person. And they're looking for more of the partnership approach to publishing the book and getting the word out there. And there's no like industry that I think that lends to best, or occupation that I think lends to traditional publishing best. You can be a business person and to do traditional publishing. You could be a veterinarian and do traditional publishing. I don't know. But I think it's more of the mindset that you have that makes you a good fit for traditional publishing.
I'm going to flip the script on that
Okay.
because you've given me some thought here. If somebody wants to go traditional publishing, that's great. But who do traditional publishers want? Because
Hmm.
they have to also say, you mentioned partnership. Sure, I could want a traditional publishing deal,
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean a traditional publisher wants me.
that's
And
right.
so what do traditional publishers look for? And what type of investments would they be willing to make in exchange for what?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, every traditional publisher has to make money, right? Every acquisitions editor is on the line for their books. They need their books to make money. They need books that they sign to out earn their advances to some degree.
And real quick here,
Yeah.
how do publishers make their money? Because if you
Yeah.
self-publish, you're an entrepreneur, you can use your book for speaking engagements, coaching. But when you're a traditional publisher, how do they make money? Is it only book sales because that's the only thing you can track? Or what are the ways that they can make money traditionally?
When you say they, do you mean authors or do you mean the publishers themselves?
The publishers, right?
Okay.
Because
Okay.
that's going to determine if they're willing to invest into a
That's
author.
right. Yeah. So, okay. So to back up a second to your first question, traditional publishers want a good investment. So they want authors whose books, I mean, again, they're thinking of it like an investment. If I put money into this thing, how much money am I going to get back from that thing? That's the question that they're asking. So that's why you go through the whole proposal process, which I know we can talk about later. Yeah, that's what a publisher is asking themselves when they look at an author as a potential partner. Are you going to be a good partner to us in that you'll make us lots of money? That's really the question they're asking. Now, I say that, but also having been on that side of the deal-making table and also working with traditional publishers all the time now, I can also tell you that they are, to some extent, just book people who get really, excited about great ideas. And I do believe that there is kind of an altruistic part of every acquisitions editor that really just wants to get great books out there into the world. But because they are also part of a business, they always have to keep that, that side of themselves in mind. And so often acquisitions editors, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience too, often we are quite conflicted, especially when we see books that we're like, oh, we get the vision, we get the excitement, we're so excited about this. And yet I don't have confidence that it will be a good investment. And that's where the sad part of the job comes in for a lot of acquisitions editors. So now to your second question, how do publishers make money? Yeah, it's entirely on book sales. And that is why they need those books to be a great investment. It's because they do just rely on straight up numbers. Like you said, for an entrepreneur or someone who has kind of a business surrounding their book, they can make up the cost of that investment in a lot of other ways. Publishers cannot. They just straight up need the book to sell a lot of copies. That's the only way they're going to out earn that investment.
I appreciate you breaking this down. I think it's really helping people understand like the truths, like the curtain is being dropped right now. And I love it. I love it. The thing that I want to talk about further here is like, I know, for example, like I give away books like hotcakes. Okay.
Yes.
I know it cost me $3.02 for my last book to buy myself. I've talked to some of my traditional published friends and they're like, I want to be more creative with some of my marketing strategies. However, I can't buy it at the cost you're buying it. I have to buy it at the cost that the publisher still gets their cut on.
Yes.
So that can lower your margins on what you're trying to do, or it can lower the amount of copies essentially you can get to give away unless you're willing to spend and do that. So there is still a way. It just looks a little bit differently, which brings me to this. One of the biggest things that people tell me is like, oh, I'm going the traditional route because I don't want to market my book. They're going to market the book for me, right? Like a lot of people, because some of the biggest books in the world over the last 5 decades, 6 decades, 100 years even, the biggest books are the ones that have been traditionally published, right? Mm-hmm. And so people assume that, oh, if I get a traditional publishing deal, therefore my book goes live and it will automatically sell and my life will change overnight. But I want to know who is actually responsible for the marketing and who does what, when, and how.
Yeah. So the author is always responsible for the marketing. And that's across the board, no matter how you publish. If you want to create any book and publish it any way, you are always going to be the primary marketer for that book. You are the one, and you're also the one who's most set up to market it because you're the most passionate about it. You're the one who believes in it the most. You're the one who benefits from it the most. And so, yeah, you are definitely the person most responsible. What some publishers can do is accelerate the author's marketing. And I say some publishers because not every publisher will do this. In a lot of cases, authors are truly on their own. What I think publishers can offer is distribution access. They can offer, your book is definitely not going to be in an airport bookstore if it's self-published, but it could be in an airport bookstore if it's traditionally published. So publishers open doors like that with distribution. When it comes to marketing, they're only going to put their, very limited, very hard-earned dollars behind the books that they feel most bullish about and where they see the author already doing a lot. So some publishers will look at their authors and see, oh, this person is really putting a lot of effort into these things. And if we tossed them a few $1,000s towards that, that could help accelerate it. And really, again, is it going to be worth the payoff? If we toss them additional dollars in addition to the investment we've already made in the book, is it going to pay off even further? If the answer is yes, they might be willing to help you out with some additional marketing money or additional marketing attention. But I definitely do not encourage authors to go into any publishing deal thinking the publisher is going to market my book, because they're most likely not.
Wow. The distribution, you said something that is really interesting. Like if you're self-published, you won't be in an airport. And if you're traditionally published, there's a small chance you could be in the airport. I beg to differ. My book is in every airport that I go to because I put it there and I take a photo of it as if it's in the airport.
Really?
Yeah. So, but I understand what you're saying. I'm just being funny and things here because I think sometimes, when we are talking about something so serious as like book deals, who gets what, how do we do it? How do we navigate it? It can feel overwhelming. And I just tell people like, look, the whole point of writing a book is to help people. The whole point of writing a book is to achieve the goals that you have for yourself, both internal and externally. And I think that if we're doing something to grow our business and help people, then why don't we put ourselves in a place where we can have more fun with it? And so every airport that I go to, I always have copies of my book. Mm-hmm. And what I do is I just go put it next to Prince Harry's book in the airport. And I go, look, I'm featured in the airport. Like, am I actually in the airport? No, but I'm having fun with it. And somebody gets to go buy that book. And then they're like, wait, this doesn't ring up. And then they just get to keep it. And it's like, wow, who, like, it's such a cool thing and a fun experience for me as the author. And then for people who like get a random copy of a book that they never know, or they see it and they're like, oh, I never saw that before. And they buy it later on Amazon. Yeah. So like, there's ways to make things fun, but yes.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. Distribution, I do think is something that is a very big value add from the traditional publishers.
Well, let me say this. I do think that self-publishing, there are ways to mitigate the downsides of self-publishing that are much easier than it is to mitigate the downsides of traditional publishing. So downsides of traditional publishing, there's that proposal required. There's really no way to get around that unless they come after you, which is unheard of. That is very rare for a publisher to approach you. If a publisher has approached you, like, wow, that is pretty amazing. It does happen, but it's rare. The low royalties, the loss of creative control, like those are things you just can't really get around when it comes to traditional publishing. However, the cons side of self-publishing, there are a lot of ways to get around it. Like, a downside of self-publishing is having to do a lot of the work yourself. Well, you could pay an assisted, self-publishing company to do a lot of that work for you. You can pay to get access to some of the same distribution networks. Again, it costs money, but like there are actually a lot of ways to mitigate some of those limitations that come with the self-publishing. So that is, that overall is kind of a pro in the self-publishing column, if you will.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because, one of the things that we decided to do was I was like, look, the way that I use my book is all dependent on me having control.
Yeah.
And so we said, well, how do we give this opportunity to people where they can not have to do all the work, but also they can have 100% control. And so that's how we've kind of built our business now is, look, we have an entire program. Like one of the ways that we work with people is, hey, we'll help you write the book. We'll coach you through it. We'll get you to the promised land there. As soon as your book's done, we'll do the rest. We'll edit it, we'll design it, we'll format it, we'll publish it for you and help you launch it.
Right.
But every author that we work with keeps 100% of the rights, royalties, and ownership. Yeah. And that was like our way of like saying like, okay, how do we bridge the best of both worlds so that you can still use it for whatever goals you have, do it on your timeline with your control, but also have that feeling of like, I don't have to deal with it, figure it out, or find it on my own. Mm-hmm. And so it's really interesting as you're saying that, all these different things. But I want to talk about this, okay? I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole. I want to go back to traditional publishing because you mentioned something that I think is really, really interesting, which is book proposals. Mm-hmm. You said there's no way around it. So what I would love for you to do, because I know you're just an absolute expert on book proposals, like you are so good at this. So does everybody need a book proposal? I know traditionally published, you said yes. Self-publishing, they may not. Like, what are the benefits of it? Like, talk to me about what is a book proposal, who needs it, and just like riff off that for a little bit.
Yeah. So a book proposal is essentially a business plan. Cool. It's a lot of people think that a book proposal is just kind of, information about the idea. It's a summary of the idea. It's an outline of the book. And it is those things, but it's also really a plan for how am I going to make this book successful?
Mm,
And so, again, going back to our business analogy, if you were starting a business, even if you were funding everything yourself, would you start that business without making a plan for how you were going to make it successful? I would not. Before I started my business, I went through like 3 or 4 iterations of a business plan, even though I knew I was going to be able to like cover all the startup costs of my business myself. I still made a business plan because I was like, I still need to know how I'm going to make this thing successful. So, relating to the self-publishing, I still think and still recommend that people who are self-publishing create some kind of business plan, slash book proposal for themselves to
mm,
show themselves how they're going to make that book successful, just like they would need to show a publisher. If it's not good enough for someone else to invest in, then why is it good enough for you to invest in? That's what I would
mm.
ask.
Interesting.
So yeah, a book proposal, we can talk about, the pieces of a book proposal, but
Yeah.
essentially you're going to have the idea itself, kind of information about the project. You're going to have the positioning of that book. So what you're going to want to do is kind of look at the global book market that's out there. You're going to look at all of the competition, all of the books that are similar to your book. And you're going to want to kind of differentiate, well, how is my book going to be different? How is my book going to add something new to the conversation? And that's a question, again, self-publishing authors need to be asking just as much as traditional publishing authors. You are going to have a section on your platform. So what are kind of all the tools in my toolbox for getting the word out about this book? What mediums do I have access to that I'll be able to use, kind of like pulling on different levers, like what buttons do I have to push in order to get the word out about my book and in front of as many eyeballs as possible? Again, that's something that self-publishing authors need to be thinking about just as much as traditional publishing authors. And then the last part, well, no, not the last part. The next part of your book proposal is going to be your promotion plan. How am I going to market this thing? How am I going to get it out into the world? What podcasts do I want to be on? What newsletters, what local news channels, what radio shows? Who am I going to ask for endorsement? Who am I going to ask for a forward? Those are all things that have to do with how is this book going to be promoted to all of the people that you have access to? And then I would say the next part would be kind of the table of contents, which, I know you definitely kind of coach authors through that when they're self-publishing as well. That's always necessary, is having a great plan for how this idea is going to flesh out into 50 or 60,000 words or however much. The only part that self-publishing authors don't need to do or isn't really necessary or helpful to them is the sample materials. You don't have to, have your writing vetted by anyone if you're self-publishing. You can just start writing, right? And you can just start working on the book. With traditional publishing, especially for nonfiction books, and I probably should have clarified earlier, I mostly work on nonfiction, prescriptive nonfiction, and memoir. For nonfiction books, you don't have to have the whole book done ahead of time before pitching it to a traditional publisher. You're just going to write a sample of the book and submit it with your proposal. So that's the only part that self-publishing authors don't really need to do.
Wow. It's so clear how knowledgeable you are about this stuff. like you just know this stuff to a T. And I think like as you're talking, I'm like, gosh, I want to listen, but like my mind's going in all different directions because I'm like, oh, look at these different angles of how you can approach it. And I like the way that you just simply break it down. And so I'd love to know, okay, how long, when you look at a traditional publishing deal, how long does it take? What does that process look like? Is it, hey, I want to go get a traditional publishing deal. Let me do the book proposal first, then go find a publisher? Is it, I need an agent with a small pitch, then we need to build a publisher, then we need it? Like, what does that process look like? And what is like an average duration of time for, let's say, a first-time author?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So I'll walk you through the process and then we'll talk about timeline. Process: start with an idea and figuring out all of those pieces of the proposal. Definitely writing a proposal is kind of your first step. And then you're going to need to pitch it to an agent. And agents put, different weight on different parts of your proposal. Some agents really, really care about the query letter. So you have a book proposal you have to write, and you also have to write this letter called a query, where you're essentially asking them to look at the proposal you wrote. And some agents really, really care about the query letter because their thinking is, if you can sell me on your book idea with just the letter, then I feel pretty confident the rest of the proposal is going to be good too. Some people care more about the proposal. Every agent, and this is kind of the hard part about the traditional publishing industry, is that every agent and every editor is going to have slightly different, preferences, and they're going to have a different process, and they're going to want different things. And that's part of the frustration. So after you get, let's say you hopefully land an agent wants to come on board and support you. They're going to coach you to make that book proposal even better for the editors that they have in mind. So the agent is kind of the gatekeeper to all of the relationships with acquisitions editors at traditional publishing houses. And so the agent is going to look at your proposal and they're going to say, okay, you are a great fit for these 20, maybe to 30 publishers that I want to pitch you to. Now, let me tell you what they're looking for, and we're going to customize this proposal for them. Maybe sometimes even to the level of to each publisher, which is kind of a lot. I mean, it is a lot of work for sure. And then the agent will pitch you to those publishers. If publishers are interested, then the agent's going to get a cut of the advance that you will hopefully be offered, or a cut of the royalties potentially. They're going to get a cut of something. And so hopefully you'll get a book deal eventually, but that's kind of how that process goes. Timeline wise, it usually takes a lot longer than people think. It can take, when I'm working with a client to ghostwrite their book proposal for them, it's often 3 to 4 months just working on the proposal. It can take another, couple months, maybe 3 to 4 months even to get an agent. If you get an agent, that's with lots of querying agents. Then your agent's going to spend time, like I said, helping you customize that proposal and make it even better. That could be up to 6 months. And then they have to spend time sending it out to publishers. So it could take another 6 months potentially. So by the time you get a book deal, you could very realistically have already been working on this book for a year. Potentially. I would say that's pretty common. And so that's something else with traditional publishing is you have to really want it just to survive all of those roadblocks, you just to make it past all those hurdles, you have to really, really want it. And you have to be willing to take all of that feedback and implement all the changes and do so much work to just get past at each stage to the next stage and to the next stage. And I'll just share with my own experience. I have a co-author and she and I have our proposal out to publishers right now. We started working on our book proposal last July. It's end of March right now. So I don't know, was that 8-9 months-ish ago that we started working on our book proposal? We finished our proposal in October, started pitching agents. We got an agent fairly quickly in November. So it was about a month for us to get an agent. And then he didn't even start pitching it to publishers until just a couple weeks ago. So, that's a 4-month gap that we were just working on the proposal and kind of building up our platform and implementing all of the changes he asked us to make before he was even ready to start pitching it to publishers. So just to give you an idea of kind of our timeline.
Yeah, I want to ask one deep question on this, and then we're going to start to wrap up, and I might throw you in the ring of fire for a little rapid fire action here. But you're talking about this timeline, and something that I've noticed with a lot of authors, especially those that are writing nonfiction, and they're using the book for maybe business growth or impact or sharing their story, legacy, credibility, whatever. One of the things that I notice is that the person that you are today evolves by the person you are 8 months from now, especially in the personal development world. Who I was 8 months ago is different than the person I am today. And so how do you navigate that in this sense? Because you do have a much longer time horizon. And how do you navigate the unknowns, right? The economy, the world, what the trends are, right? People had book ideas in 2019 that could have been really great that become immediately irrelevant once the pandemic got started.
Yep. And that
happened. And so what I'd love to know from you is are you constantly updating this as you go through this journey? Or how do you be okay with like, this is good enough for today?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and definitely a very realistic struggle for people who are interested in traditional publishing. And the argument there, is you really need a book that's going to be perennial for traditional publishing. You need a book, and Ryan Holiday has a fantastic book called Perennial Seller that I always recommend, and I send to all of my clients. I send his book Perennial Seller to all of them because I'm like, you need this book. This is the mindset that you have to have for traditional publishing, is what's going to be the most long lasting message that I can send. So for me and my co-author, we believe that our message is pretty perennial. We have, we are book coaches. We are, experts in this area. And that's what our book is going to be about. And that's not something that's going to change in the next, 6 months or 8 months or however long it takes for us to publish this book. That's not going to change. And the methods that we've developed for coaching people through this process are also not going to change. And we know that they're going to continue to be relevant whenever this book gets published. So we're not too worried about that. And you do need to know that that's the case for you if you're going to traditionally publish.
Yeah. I'm so grateful that you've shared like some of your personal stuff as well, because like, it's one thing of talking from like your experience. It's one thing of talking from like what you've heard, but you talked about your experience and then actually you going through this process.
Yeah.
Which I think is really, really cool to see. And that's a really great gift that you have to be able to share with people. And so I'm really, really grateful for that. But I want to do a couple quick rapid fire things. Okay.
Okay.
Now, I didn't prep this, so we're going to wing it. But what I kind of want to do is think about like, I'm going to share a few things and I just want you to give me like gut reaction of like, what's better, self or traditional publishing?
Okay.
Just so that we can like kind of start breaking it down in terms of it. So the first one is, what's a shorter timeline, self or traditional?
Self.
Which is better for distribution?
Traditional.
What is better for marketing?
Neither.
What is better? Let me ask this question in another way. As an author, do you take on more responsibility, self or traditional, when it comes to marketing?
I still think both, but
no, that's great. This is why we're doing this, because I want people
Yeah.
to see like what I'm trying to do here. And like I said, I just made this up, is I want people to see what is maybe right for them or not, right?
Yeah.
If you have 3 years, which one is going to likely produce a higher quality book?
Traditional.
Okay. Which one is going to give you more control?
Self-publishing.
Which one's going to give you, more likely than not, better royalty share?
Self-publishing for sure.
Okay, cool. I think those are some of the things that we talked about today, and I kind of just wanted to bring them back to the forefront as we wrap up here.
Yep.
But as we wrap up here, you do so many cool things. You mentioned ghostwriting proposals, coaching people through the proposal process, helping people throughout the process of writing the book. Like, you've had your feet in everything and you've done everything, and now you do a lot of really, really great things. So for people that are like, damn, you're good, I need you, like, where do we go to follow you? How do we work with you? Give us the goods.
Yeah. So you can find me at my website. It's just arielcurry.com, and you'll find from there kind of links to everything else. But just to give you the quick rundown, Hungry Authors is the name of the podcast that I co-host with Liz Morrow. We do that together. She's also my co-author who we're, pitching this book idea. We are starting a Hungry Authors community. So information on that will soon be available. We would love to connect with you on Instagram. That's kind of our biggest social profile. So you can just follow us at Hungry Authors. That is the best way to connect with us there.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a blast. I feel like we just like nerded out about traditional publishing, and I loved every second of it. So this was awesome. And for those of you that have listened to this, like, I hope that this either confirmed the direction you wanted to go or opened your eyes to the possibilities of the directions. And the only thing I'm going to share here is this. The one certainty that I want you to take away is that if you need something to deal with book proposals, talk to this woman right here. All right? Because she is the real deal. So if you enjoyed this, let her know, let us know. We appreciate you. And I can't wait to see your book underway, crossing the finish line to live the life you know you're capable of living. That's what I got for you today, people. I'll see you on the next one.